Welcome to Solar Insiders, a podcast reporting on the people, technologies, and policies shaping the world's biggest energy source. Presented by Sophie Vorath, the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid, and Rachel Williamson, senior reporter at Renew Economy. Solar Insiders is brought to you by Pylon, the essential solar design tool to grow your solar business with quick and effortless proposals that will impress your customers.
Hello and welcome to Solar Insiders for another week. I am your host, Sophie Vorath, the editor of Renew Economy and One Step Off the Grid. And joining me is Rachel Williamson, our lead reporter.
Hi, Sophie. How are you doing this week?
I am very well, thank you. And you?
Very well. I have just been to the Climate Summit by the Carbon Market Institute and heard some very interesting things there.
You've been out and about and legit reporting. Well, we will talk about them after we listen to the latest interview, which this week is with Megan Fisher, who is the CEO and director of EnergyLab, which is this great charity organisation that is set up to help startups get from, I guess, the desktop phase to the commercial phase, or from the garage to the market. They've been around for nearly 10 years, which is amazing, and have built this amazing network of support. And some of their alumni include the likes of Amber Electric, National Renewable Network, 5B, some really, really great companies that are now not only helping our energy market evolve and move into the renewable age, but taking their smarts overseas. So let's have a listen to our interview with Megan Fisher. Megan Fisher, welcome to Solar Insiders.
Thanks for having me, Sophie. I'm very excited to be here.
I'm very excited to have you. Now, I'm going to start by just rolling off a few company names. We've got Amber Electric, OptiGrid, National Renewable Network, EcoJoule Energy, and Alexum. Now, what do all these companies have in common? Well, all of them have been on the cutting edge of our changing consumer energy grid, really, like in a big way, and some more recently, but like Amber Electric's been around for goodness a long time. But what they also all have in common is that they are all alumni of EnergyLab's Climate Solution Accelerator program, and you are the big boss at EnergyLab, CEO and managing director. Is that, I've got that right? Yes. So tell us what it's all about and how you've helped these companies that have become integral parts of our energy marketplace.
Yeah, absolutely. So EnergyLab's been around since 2017. We're a charity, actually, and our mission is totally driven by helping founders and startups to grow their businesses up and roll them around the world so that we can help decarbonize the planet. Big mission for a little company. That's what we're.
I like it.
Here for. Yeah, that's right. You have to think big. To do that, we run a range of programs and have been doing that for a long time now. So the Climate Solutions Accelerator started in 2017, but right now we run 10 different programs. 8 of them are focused along the growth journey of the startup, starting all the way at helping people launch startups, all the way through to scaling and going international. And then 2 of them we do in partnership with our startup support global partner, New Energy Nexus, and they're focused on the lithium battery value chain. So helping create startup innovation along the lithium battery value chain, all the way from processing to recycling. And we do what we do with help of a big network. We're a small team, 10 people, but we've got this amazing community that we've built over nearly 10 years of almost 450 experts.
Amazing.
It is incredible to see people giving back and want to see the growth of innovation in the country. We have an angel investment platform with 240 angel investors. And now we have this amazing startup network too of alumni, a few of whom you mentioned. So 270 startup alumni and another 190 aspiring founder alumni. So people that wanted to start a startup. So this little group of 10 people in EnergyLab get to work with hundreds of people to help our startup innovation ecosystem.
Yeah, and this, all these words can, they sound sort of big and complicated, but startups and, like innovation are so important in this space. And, nurturing these companies when they have this big idea and they're sort of coming out against huge incumbent companies who've been around and kind of dominated for a very long time is no small thing. And so supporting them is crucial. And I have seen, Australia has punched above its weight in solar research, definitely. But there's been a lot of calls lately, I've noticed, for us to really knuckle back down onto supporting these startup companies and to sort of lift innovation up out of the universities and into the commercial sphere. And so it's just fantastic to know that there's this big, huge group doing this job.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like the focus that's come up lately with the R&D work that's going on with the government, looking into how we get better at R&D, and then some of the support elements that have been put around it, the industry growth program, the NRF. I think it's this real acknowledgement that startups can do a lot for our ecosystem. If we look at energy, the places where I see startups play, it's not always about totally disrupting the whole entire market, but they're been there to help speed up growth and make things cheaper and easier to deploy. And that's the position they're playing in. So they can really help us get quicker and more efficient with our energy transition. But I think overall, if we look at our economy in Australia in general, the call out around productivity over the last few weeks from the Productivity Commission, they've made it clear we're stuck. We're going to be on low gear for a long time unless things start to change in our industry and in the companies that we have at the top. So I think we've seen that big corporates and big industry aren't necessarily the best ones to reinvent their business models. They're great at optimization and doing the work that they do. And it's not very often they have the incentives or the requirements to actually disrupt themselves. So startups can help do that either with totally new models like what Amber Electric is doing with retail, or those really, really helpful models like 5B, who are creating a new way and an easy way to roll out solar. So supporting these companies is really important. And we don't necessarily always do a great job of it. As you mentioned before, it's really hard for a tiny little startup to go in and work with a really big industry player. And it's also hard for them to work with startups. They don't know how to do that either. So in some ways, playing that role in between them and helping them connect and figure out how to work together and adopt different innovation is what we focus on and what we do.
Kind of like a dating service.
That's right. That's
matchmaking.
Right. It is matchmaking. In so many ways, it is matchmaking and relationship counseling. I think it's all together.
I love it. And that's so much of what we do, isn't it, is human and humans getting in the way of themselves and their ideas. But yeah, you do hear so often with companies, like Amber and others, where it really starts with, maybe one or two people having an idea and saying, hang on, we could do this better. And, or I'm looking for this product and it's not out there and I want it. So I'm going to create it. And then to make that a reality, so many steps. And in particular, and you did that, you mentioned it's not all about, certainly not all about upstart retailers and that kind of thing, but just on that subject, we have also seen a few of those that were so promising fail, and that's really tough to see as well because, it is such a hard market to compete in. And you and I were just discussing this before we hit record about the complexity of Australian energy markets. And, these big companies that have been in it since the get-go and have, rooms full of traders and stuff like that. It's very difficult to compete against that. And it's very difficult to have all of the potential outcomes covered. So yeah, I can only imagine having all of these experts on hand to talk to people would be so helpful, as well as the people who are going to be realistic and say, okay, you need this much funding, and that's only just for the start. And what are the areas you find that you know people are most needing when they first start out on their startup journey?
Yeah, look, many areas, and I think you're so right. The way you've put it is really eloquent in terms of the experts that we have, the founders that we've got in our network are really all about helping startups not fall into the potholes that, unless you're an expert in the sector and you've done it before, you've seen it before, you're going to fall into. So that's what we're trying to stop in so many ways, and we have seen some really promising startups like Tritium, for example, and it be so incredible. And we're also proud and excited for what they were doing. But in the end, for whatever reason, whether it was the product itself or whether it was bad financial markets, it depends on, the story that you're diving into, that it just didn't work. But I'd hate to see people just take that as the thing that we can do. I think there's huge lessons in there, and it shows what we're capable of. But going back to startups when they begin in some of those challenges, it can be anything. So many startups might be experts in a sector. So a founder might be a mid-career professional, or they've been working in the sector for a long time. They're potentially incredibly technical people who understand their thing very well, which means that the commercialization side, the business side, is not always their strength.
Yeah.
Which is totally okay. So quite often it is that business side that they need that help with, the commercial side. What's the pricing structure? What's the go-to-market strategy? So quite often it's matching them up with those sorts of things. But then it's also understanding things like, how do you go about raising? If you've never done it before and you haven't had a startup before and you don't know about financial markets, understanding angel investors and different types of venture capital firms and family offices and when to do what and how to not get taken advantage of is really challenging as well. So definitely fundraising is always a big thing. And as you mentioned before, so is business development and how to work with industry and how to work with customers.
Regulators, all
Yeah,
of that.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All of that is very difficult. And we have all of those in our network, including, luckily enough, the AEMC have approached us before as well, which is incredible. It's like, how can we make sure that we're making the work we're doing relevant for startups and disruptors, so that we're on, around the innovation that needs to actually happen in this sector. So that's been really exciting to see as well.
That's fantastic to hear. Yeah. I mean, that is one thing that I really like about this industry, and I've really noticed it a lot more since doing this podcast, is how much everyone is willing to work together. There's a lot of different opinions and different views, and there's some sort of clashing in how we should go about this, but in general, most people are pretty keen to help, pretty keen to go, okay, well, what do you think, and how can we factor that in? And I think that's a really great thing. And the more people we have sort of facilitating that, the better,
That's true. It is a really collaborative sector. And the startup sector is very much like, I don't know if it's because people have got this, it's like this impact, particularly those that are looking at the clean energy transition, that they have this impact focus, and therefore that leads more to having a purpose greater than whatever it is they're doing in whatever company that they're in. But there's definitely a lot of collaboration that works. It doesn't mean, as you said, it doesn't mean there's not disagreement, but there's certainly a lot of collaboration, and I love it when we're having an event and some founders that are maybe newer to the sector will come up to me later on and say, "This was amazing. The vibes were just incredible. Everyone was so friendly." It's like, this is it. This is what we've got. This is the support base that you've got that are rooting for you. Yeah, no, it's a cool sector to work in.
I thought, how does it work? Because you've just had another sort of what would you call it, process to select this year's cohort that you're going to be working with the next 6 months. How does it work if you're a startup? I mean, in a nutshell, Megan, if you're a startup and you're wanting some help, what's the process to get into the accelerator program?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, just get in contact with us. You can do that on our website. We're very, very easy to hunt down. The accelerator program itself is a long process. It's a 6-month process from the time that we start calling for people to apply until we actually announce the cohort itself. And the reason it's so long is that there's investment involved in this program. So we start with call outs, there's applications, there's reviews of applications, there's interviews by the EnergyLab team. And then eventually, which makes this program really interesting, the money that goes into the startups is actually raised from our angel network. So a portion of our angel network go into the fund each year. And ultimately, it is them that decide who's in the cohort. Talk about collaborative meetings. One of my favorite meetings of the year is at the end when all the angels have voted and we need to decide on the 10 startups that go in. And it is this wonderful discussion of, are we hitting the right things around the energy transition and climate technologies and decarbonization? What's the gender mix? What's the spread of different companies in the cohort? Does it make sense? It's not a typical meeting, I think, for a bunch of investors. But if you look at the last few years and the startups that we've had in the cohort, they've done a pretty good job. So that's the process for a startup. So again, it's about application. It is a good 6-month commitment on the other side when the program starts, and we start helping them by introducing them to mentors and experts and having panels of founders that have done it before where they can just ask whatever they want. So that's a good commitment of 6 months. We don't take up that many hours. We're very respectful of startups' time. But the process does take a long time, but it's a really enjoyable thing. And at the end of it, every year I look at the cohort and I'm like, wow, there's more. Because sometimes you're like, have we found all the good startups? I'm like, no, there are more coming through the ranks and they are doing awesome things. So it's incredibly promising for this country. I was in corporate and I started working in this sector in 2017. And at that time, there weren't as many startups. There's definitely a lot more now. So we are doing something right. We are getting the flywheel going in this sector. So we need to keep doing it.
That's fantastic. So it's not always a purely commercial decision who you choose. Like obviously you're looking at these companies and thinking, well, can it work? That's going to be the first thing. But you're not always sort of thinking, well, this is, it's with your investors, they're not always sort of looking at the bottom line. Is that right to say?
I think it's interesting with angel and impact investors. They're always looking for a return. There's no doubt about that. But then that mix of the return that they're after is different. So and the other thing that they'll also consider is this startup the right fit for this program? Are they going to get benefit? Because that's why they're investing. They're investing, then we run the program, they get better, and hopefully at the end of it, they're looking at raising a really fantastic raise. So if they're not going to improve and grow through the program, then it makes no sense for them to be in there. But there are alternative elements that the investors are considering. It is not just purely financial returns.
Yeah. Speaking of financial returns, though, you had some amazing news this week with one of your alumni, NRN, which is National Renewable Network, which has been doing some great work in first of all, I guess, trying to democratize solar and storage, getting it out there to people at no upfront cost, no cost. And then secondly, also in setting up VPPs. Tell us about what they did this week.
That's right. So NRN, National Renewable Network, and their wonderful CEO, Alan Hunter, have just done their Series A raise, which is so exciting. And that total, I guess, capital raised is $67.2 million.
Fantastic.
Which is enormous and important to point out for the purists that 17 million of that is equity and 50 million of that is debt. And the reason that's important is for exactly the reason that you said, is that Alan and the team are allowing households to actually get access to solar and battery without buying it themselves. So the debt facility allows them to build up that asset base. So it was huge to see that raise happen, and great to see it in a sector where you can really see that a decarbonisation and equity can go together, because that's really what they're creating with their virtual power plant solution.
And that announcement of that capital raise followed hot on the heels of their announcement, I think it was last week, where they launched this new, I guess, offering alongside Alinta Energy, which is, and we're talking about all this collaboration and the old and the new. Alinta is something you associate, I guess, Gentailer network company. Well, not Gentailer, network company that, is probably more closely associated with gas, and is, doing its bit to turn everything around. And, so they've joined together to make an offering, which we did a story about it last week, and it got a huge amount of interest, because it's this, it's this idea of, I guess, providing battery and solar to houses for no upfront cost. There's no sort of payment plan or anything like that. The premise is that, they basically own the asset and run it, and, set you up with I guess, is it a set fee, electricity rate?
Well, effectively what happens is that Alinta, as the retail partner, bills the customer as per normal, because they get to leverage the virtual power plant. The customer ends up saving, it's estimated to be around 30% or $1,000 a year on their energy bill, and they're getting the solar and the battery for free. So it's this really amazing win-win scenario where the customer saves overall on their energy bill. The retailer gets to leverage some of the battery asset for when they need it, and overall we're getting more renewable energy. So it really is a win-win solution.
And presumably we're getting it onto those houses that, perhaps just still are the last ones that we can't get into the equation, who, despite any help, any rebates and that kind of thing, still can't afford it, or just aren't doing it. And I guess it really makes it a no-brainer, because you just don't have to think about it. They're putting it on. It's in their interest to keep the asset running well. That they're going to pick good quality stuff, because that's how it's going to work for them. And it's not going to be for everybody. But I think it's one of those things that we've talked about in this industry a lot, where we really need that financial solution to join all of the other stuff, so that for people who still really can't find the time or the money up front, or even just the brain space to put solar and a battery, certainly, can do it. And, I think it's great. It's a really, really great addition to this market, and it's going to make a real difference.
I agree. I agree entirely. The solution they've come up with is clever. It's all about equality, and in some ways, Australia is leading the pack when it comes to solar on rooftops. It's 40%, so it's like, that's huge. But that also means there's 60% that don't have it. So that's still also an enormous market opportunity, an enormous renewable energy opportunity to go after. And I think this is part of unlocking the rest of the segment.
Yeah, and I might be wrong, but I was thinking when I was writing this story last week that it would be a great option for landlords as well, like for rental apartments. I'm not sure of how that would work, and whether that's because I suppose it would lock the tenant into an energy plan that they may not want. But I thought if for landlords who are reluctant to put it on their properties, this could be a really easy thing to do, and you make it part of your rental offer, is that this is what you're doing, this is going to be your energy, it's going to be this much cheaper than if you didn't have solar and a battery. I can only think that would be attractive to potential tenants. But so maybe it'll get some landlords off their backsides as well.
Look, I think so. And I think it's one of those good stories. There's been so many around VPPs and what they are and why are people worried about them. And I think there's a good a good nature in this one that gives more confidence to that type of solution in the market.
Yeah, and I think I listened to a panel at I think it was the ACES conference. No, prior to that, about BPPs, and all of these experts, including from Reposit, were saying there's just still a lot to learn. And we don't always get it right, and rolling out all these different programs and offerings and approaches is really important because you need to have a lot of different things to offer different customers. It's not going to be one size fits all. And that's a great little segue to Amber, who's another of your alumni, which has really been so successful. And we spoke to them last week about how well they're going off the back of this battery rebate, because they're one of these VPPs that I think probably people wouldn't even realise it is a VPP, because traditionally you think, oh, it's something you sign up to and kind of hand over the reins and kind of that's it. But it's sort of always built itself as very consumer focused and not so focused on obviously it tends to work out that that's good for the grid as well, because they work with the market to get the best returns. But yes, this idea that it's more about working with every individual customer with a battery and trying to get them the best value from their assets.
Yeah, absolutely. The Amber model is so different. And you're right, Amber was an alumni of EnergyLab back in 2018. I think they started in 2017, so did EnergyLab, and then they were on the accelerator program in 2018. I've actually heard Chris talk about this as well. I know that back in the early days before my time, he got a lot of help from James Tilbury, who was who was one of the co-founders and CEOs at EnergyLab, really helping them figure out their model. So it was great. It was great hearing that from Chris. But they are a huge success story, really, in a very difficult sector.
Very difficult.
To come in and create a disruptive model, selling on the wholesale cost of energy, a subscription model, like such a trend in so many ways over the last decade. But I believe now they've raised $80 million in capital. They've had a huge round not that long ago. I heard somewhere that 40% of new home installations with batteries are working with them. This battery unlock for Amber, I think, is going to be big. And they've been building towards this for years now, getting ready to be able to work with solar batteries and EVs. They're definitely ready for it. And you're right, the model's different because it's all about you as a consumer. They're your assets and they optimize them for you. And you pay them a subscription each month to be able to have that service and access that wholesale cost. I think it's incredibly clever. It was really great to see them do the expansion with their last round. So working with E.ON in the UK, that's great. Like, what a huge success story. So we've got incredibly clever business model with really clever tech, both in Australia and going overseas. This is a huge success story for us and shows again the economic value around this for Australia. I think they're at over 100 employees now. Like, this is a large organization, a startup. We'll keep calling them a startup, but a large organization creating economic value.
I think I've flipped it to upstart lately.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
it's like, well, they're not new, but they're still, bringing it.
They are absolutely. They're definitely keeping that startup vibe around them, which I think is really important in the innovation space.
And getting into the UK market is no small thing, because actually the UK market in that sense with the retailers and at the grid edge is actually a bit, it was quite advanced. And, I know there's been a lot of collaboration to and fro, and some of the big gentailers in Australia are really looking to that market to see what's next and everything. So really impressive from Amber. So let's talk about a couple of the new group that will be benefiting from your services for the next 6 months. What I found really interesting about this list, and it's a great list, and there's some that aren't particularly so much energy focused, and they're all just as important. But we're going to talk about our energy ones here. And one of them is, it's not a startup, but it's SunWiz, and it's been around for as long as I have, which is coming on 14 years, and probably much longer.
That's true.
And it's been in lockstep with the growth of Australia's solar market, rooftop solar market. They've really sort of synonymous with, I don't know, all of a lot of what you know about the Australian solar market comes through them, and Warwick's worked so hard to sort of build up this model. So tell us about, there's a bit of a different angle to this, insofar as I guess they're well established in Australia, but this is about starting up elsewhere.
That's right. I must say I was really surprised to see Warwick on the list and have those conversations, but also incredibly flattered as an organisation as well. But Warwick's made it really clear they've done such an incredible job over the last 15 years doing what they're doing in Australia, and really he's been a real veteran of this industry, which is amazing. But he knows it's time to shift. They've done what they're doing here, and it's going really well. But there's growth opportunities internationally, and they want help and advice. So how do you do that? What's the best way to do that? What are the connections that we need? And we and our network are perfectly suited to help him do that. But also, again, another story of Australian ingenuity going overseas. So it was really wonderful to have him as part of the cohort. And I think I'm sure the other founders in the cohort will be thrilled to have him there too, because he'll be able to share so much of his experience with them as well.
Yeah. And I think it's a sign of a really healthy company that they can say, yeah, we need help, and we want to, not just to sort of go off half-cocked into, sure, we've mastered our domain here, but, this is something we're not so sure about. And I think it's fantastic. It's very Warwick, and he supports a lot of people, always in the industry, is always, putting people up for recognition and sharing knowledge. So I think it's great.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, me too. Noting that he needs the help, I think shows an incredibly smart business operator. And we've had this happen before. Infravision, who do drone stringing of power lines, they started in our scale up program, and they did incredibly well in that. But then the next year they came back to the Climate Solutions Accelerator because they were adding a new product and looking to go overseas. So they just came back to where it can be an earlier stage program, and it's brilliant that the startups are recognizing where they need more help.
Absolutely. Now, another one of your companies this year is called Flipped Energy. I'd love to hear a bit more about this company.
Yes, that's right. So again, really, really new organization looking at automated demand response. So this is interesting because demand response has been talked about for a long, long time, and it's been very hard to get right. And I think that automated component, I'm like, oh, well, that's interesting, because nobody wants to think about this thing, whether you're a consumer or a business. You don't want to have to think about if you have to shut off or turn up or whatever. It's like understanding the parameters of what is possible in normal operation in a very detailed way, and being able to move in between them to create the room for demand response is what they're doing. Really, really clever. Very early still. But one of the areas that sort of really piqued my interest when I first talked to them is they've been diving into data centers, which has become a big issue for many, many places. There's so much demand for new data centers to come onto the grid. I know I was talking to people I know in the grid area in Ireland. They have got an 8-year wait time for new data center connections.
Wow.
So we don't want to be in that situation here. So they're looking at data centers and how they can create those automation activities where they can turn things up and down, but not really affect anything that doesn't matter. Like pick the things that are allowed to process more slowly and therefore can turn down automatically. So this is exciting and necessary, I think, for us to be able to keep up with the demand in data centers as they move forward, but something that can also be used in other sectors. So I can't wait to see what they do around demand response, because again, talked about for a long time, but not really nailed.
Yes, and I think we had that was part of the AEMO's most recent reviews of everything, sort of talking about that, that mechanism that we've had in place hasn't quite worked. It's not quite incentivized and sent the right signals. And I think a lot of that, and this is again what they said about VPPs too, it's not just the signals or the regulations or the offerings, it's also the technology, like the actual software and getting that right. And, so there's a whole bunch of things that have to align. But I think, demand response will be absolutely crucial and so important once we get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what they're doing for, I guess, people out there right now, that and this is how I relate to it. It's like, imagine sitting in your house, you don't want to have to turn off your air conditioning or off your heater, but maybe it just goes up half a degree or down half a degree, and I'm totally making that up right now, but you don't notice the comfort difference. You have no idea it's happening, but you build all that up and all of a sudden that's something interesting for the grid. And you're right, that's the technology that we need sitting under these things so that they can be operational and useful.
Yeah, it's fantastic. All right. Well, there's just I could talk to you about this for hours, and I'm sure you could too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we'll probably have to reconvene at some point and discuss again. But I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been so good talking to you and hearing about this amazing work that EnergyLab does in helping our startups and upstarts. And thank you.
It's been my absolute pleasure. And I must just say, like, right back at you, when I started in this sector in 2017, my go-to to learn about what it was all about was definitely all of the Renew Economy articles and all of the podcasts. It's always on rotation. So right back at you. And it's what I recommend to anyone coming into this sector. So thank you so much for what you all do.
That was Megan Fisher, the CEO and director of EnergyLab. It was such a great chat with her, and it's, again, always so inspiring to hear of all the collaboration going on and the goodwill out there to try and help everyone get their ideas out, and I mean, a lot of these things are really geared at consumers, because often they come about from people going, I want this product and it's not there, and so I'm going to make it, which we have seen with Amber in particular. But yes, a lot of what we were discussing is been innovation in virtual power plants, which you have some fresh news about, Rachel.
Yes, I do. So this morning there was a very interesting chat between Kerry Schott, who, as usual, asked all the questions that I had written down and I was going to ask.
She's a legend.
She is. And the chair of the ACCC, Jenna Cass-Gottlieb. And the issue that they were talking about was sort of general competition things, but virtual power plants came up. And this is an area that the ACCC is now looking at, because, like, they're looking at things like mobile payments and how, if you have an iPhone, you can only do contactless payments if you use the Apple Wallet. And, like, if we let, say, distributors say, you're in our area, the only VPP that you can use is ours, well, that's going to be pretty bad for
Problematic.
problematic for VPP uptake. And so they're looking at it from the perspective of people, householders, consumers need to have choice. They need to have choice as to who they're allowed to take. They've got to have choice over the terms that they choose. And the offers of these VPPs need to be very clear about what they're bundling in terms of price and what they're bundling in terms of terms and conditions.
Yeah, how long you're locked in for, how much of your battery can they use?
What kind of battery you can bring in? Do you have to buy the battery from them to be able to join it? If you do buy the battery from them, what's the markup that you're buying it at for the pleasure of participating in that VPP compared to, say, buying something of your own choice and bringing it in? So all of these little things that, you think it should be pretty simple, but actually all these VPPs have very different terms and very different requirements for you to join.
That's true. And part of the reason for that is because, there's demand for it, and we do need a lot of different shaped and sized offerings out there because, they are offering some quite different things. Taking Amber, for example, which is, sort of, I think, BYO hardware. And then it really is about you come to us with your battery and your solar system, and we try and get the best out of your assets. And then at the other end of the spectrum, we have another EnergyLab alumni, NRN, which is National Renewable Network, which has just launched another. It's really going hard on the VPP subsector, and it's just launched another offering with Alinta, which we wrote about last week. And that's more about, we basically provide it. I think it's Sig Energy. I forget what the panels are. But yes, and it's no cost upfront for the customer. Basically, we install it, we own it, we run it to get the best out of the assets for us. And then we offer you a discounted sort of set electricity rate. So that's, two pretty different offerings right there. And, neither are going to be suitable for everyone, but each serves their purpose. And I suppose it's very important that we've got some oversight over all of these. And, it's, I think, for the consumer, really complicated. And this is where I guess it's going to be really important for retailers to do their job and make sure that consumers are educated on all of the aspects of whatever VPP they're joining.
Well, that was one of the issues that was brought up this morning, was that transparency requires information and time. And often, who's got time for reading all the small print if all of these terms are in the small print rather than just bullet point on the website,
which they're going to be because there's a lot of detail
things that you get across. And so you can see some issues coming up. You can see what issues are going to come up in the future, and there's going to be complaints. There's going to be a level of distrust that grows, I suspect, around VPPs, just because people haven't had the time or the energy or the inclination or the education to be able to do that, those sort of deep dives that are needed when you're handing over a big pile of money to someone, or when you're handing over control of your expensive assets.
Of your assets, yes. And it's, I think I saw a quote from the CEO of NRN saying that no household should buy their own solar or battery. And I was like, geez, that's a big call. The whole part of the whole, I think, reason why this has been such a big success in Australia is that whole motivation of consumers taking the power back, this narrative of, stuff I'm going to put in my panels and I'm going to put in my battery and I'm going to use mostly my own power and then maybe some from the grid.
I've actually long thought that because of that independent attitude that has been bred into Australians around solar panels and now batteries, that this is possible, that the turn towards VPPs is going to be very difficult, but this is possibly not the best country to be starting if you're starting out a VPP. Possibly the better option would be to go to New Zealand, where people still don't have solar because it's more expensive. The rebates aren't there, but big EV adoption there. big moves towards electrification. A lot of things are already electrified because gas is not a big part of the home system. I thought, people don't have that same, this is my asset, this is my electricity attitude towards them.
That's a really interesting point. But as Megan pointed out in the interview just now, there is still a big chunk of Australian households, and look, a lot of them might be households that can't have solar, but there is still a significant chunk that don't have it yet. And I suspect that some of those are going to be the ones who, as you mentioned before, don't have the brain space or the time or the upfront cash to put solar on. And so in those instances, maybe VPPs will play an important role here in Australia. But you're dead on, like the trust issue is not insignificant, and the industry is aware of that. And this is why it's really important that all these early movers in VPPs get it right, and they don't, inadvertently stuff people around, or advertently. Is that a word? Just made that up. Because some significant damage will be done. And I've said this before, WA is going to be a very, very interesting test case, because that's the only state really where this battery rebate is it's mandatory for you to join a VPP and it's, I think, a 2-year period. So if you haven't got it right within that 2-year period, you're going to see this exodus, and it's going to be a bit of a worry for that grid, as it's so isolated. Yes, all very interesting. And I think another reason why the ACCC is probably putting its magnifying glass to this sector is because the battery rebate is going gangbusters. So we've had, I think 28,000 is the number that the feds have been putting out there this week.
You said 6 months worth in 6 weeks?
6 weeks, yeah, because last year, the first half of 2024, I think that 30,000 were installed all around the country. And then, in the first, not even quite 6 weeks of this rebate, we have nearly the same amount. So that's really quite extraordinary. And you have to assume that quite a few of these will be signing up to VPPs in New South Wales in particular, which has been one of the states that's led uptake. There is that extra incentive, extra discount if you sign up to a VPP. And I think that's where, Amber has done really well so far, because I think people are discovering that as a nice way to get into that without, feeling like you're making a deal with the devil, for want of better words.
I'm surprised that it's New South Wales actually and not Queensland, because, I know Queensland and New South Wales sort of ticky-tack between who's done the most solar installs lately and which one has the most rooftop solar capacity. But, the sheer size of the rooftops in Queensland, and bungalow site, cities that are made of bungalows, I mean, there just must be so much solar that is being created, which...
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know why. I know that last time I checked, which I think was at about the month mark of the rebate, it was New South Wales and South Australia that were doing the best as far as, installing through the rebate. So I don't know. I'm sure Queensland will catch up. It is a couple of hours behind the rest of us.
I wasn't going to say it. I'm going to say it.
What do they say? 2 hours and 10 years. But I'm sure they will catch up. And with a vengeance, because as you say, there's just heaps of solar there already and heaps of potential to store it. But I do know that some, especially on the regional grids, they had a very sweet feed-in tariff for a very long time. That's been gone for a while now, but I think there probably wasn't that incentive to get a battery. But surely that's hitting now. We shall see. I think that the numbers are going to keep coming thick and fast, and we're going to learn a lot. And I think all of this innovation at the grid edge and for retailers and VPP providers is going to be really, really interesting. And it'll show us which batteries are going to be more popular. It's going to show us, I think it'll lead to a spike in EV uptake eventually, because people are going to start to see this as a whole ecosystem and see that battery on wheels can add, as well as saving them a lot of money on fuel. So, yes, it's going to be very, very, very interesting. But you are heading off away for a couple of weeks. I thought we should mention that because you probably won't be here for our next Top and Tail.
No, we'll be back to Giles, no doubt.
Yes, and we shall miss you, but have a wonderful, wonderful trip. And we can't wait to hear all about it when you get back and all about your, I'm sure, observations about whatever energy things you see on your travels and what habits are happening in Europe. And until next time, Rachel.
Until next time.
That is all we have for this week. Thank you to our sponsors, Pylon, and to our listeners and readers. We will see you again in a couple of weeks' time, but it is bye for now.
Solar Insiders was brought to you by Pylon. Pylon provides easy-to-use solar design software for solar installers and retailers, with pay-as-you-go pricing, no monthly costs and no lock-in contracts. Join Australia's top solar companies who trust Pylon to design high-resolution, CEC-ready solar proposals.